It is 32 minutes past the hour of 12 on January the 20th, 2021, which means for 32 minutes, the United States has had a new president. Its 46th president, Joseph R. Biden Jr., has taken the oath of office. He took the oath of office at 11:48 local time before delivering his speech in front of the U.S. Capitol building, a historic day in Washington, D.C., full of the ceremony we are used to, just without the crowds. But even without the crowds, it was still an emotional day. As I say, an address from Joe Biden in which he said, "We will lead not by the example of our power, but by the power of our example," when referring to his vice president, Kamala Harris, the first female vice president, the first American vice president, the first Asian American vice president. He said simply, "Don't tell me things can't change." And overall, his message was one of unity. As we expected, a speech trying to unite the United States and which directly referenced the divisive events in Washington, D.C. of the 6th of January. Joe Biden is now the 46th president of the United States. He concluded his speech by saying to the American people, "I will always level with you." Jennifer Victor is with me, as she has been throughout this coverage. That was quite something. We were all wondering what it would be like without the big crowd, without that swell of emotion that comes with it, the one you were talking about before from previous inaugurations. I would suggest it lost nothing.
I think that's right. And you know, it's interesting, as much as his Joe Biden's inaugural address has been strongly anticipated and hit a lot of the sort of conventional themes that we expect inaugural addresses to hit, I will tell you the one thing I didn't expect was that it might get upstaged by his new national, very young, very talented poet laureate. The message and the teaching that Amanda Gordon provided in that poem that she authored really hit the moment. And highlighted the themes of his speech in a really coherent way.
Jennifer, let's pause for a moment and bring in James Bays, our diplomatic editor. He is down at Capitol Hill watching that. James, you've seen a lot of speeches across your career, reporting for Al Jazeera and many others. Where do you put that one?
Well, Kamal, you and I, we do a job which is covering news stories, but from time to time we cover history being made, and that's what happens here every 4 years. And you saw it in front of your eyes. You saw a new president. I was here 4 years ago. This was the end of the Trump presidency, the beginning of the Biden presidency, and you really could not get two people who are more different. We have a brand new president who is the oldest president in American history at 78 years old. He's also a Washington insider, but he's also known as a man of the people. And that's what you got in the speech that we heard here just a few minutes ago, starting his speech with the words, "This is democracy's day, this is America's day." He went on in a plea for unity to lay out the crises, cascading crises, as he described them, which are facing America. He said it's a time for testing. He said those crises were the coronavirus, they were political division, they were racial division, and the climate. But he says that even those who didn't vote for him must put their trust in him, and he will try and find a way, because he says America has always prevailed in the past. A speech that was pleading all the American people to unify together after the events that we saw here at this very spot 2 weeks ago. This was where the Capitol was first breached, what he described as an uncivil war. He says politics doesn't have to be a raging fire destroying everything in its path. A plea for unity from the new President of the United States, Kamal.
James, we are up about 10 floors above you here on Constitution Avenue, and I said earlier it almost felt voyeuristic. We were looking in on what looked like quite a small ceremony, certainly by previous standards. Tell me what it was like actually being there for this unique inauguration.
Unique in many ways. Where I am personally is actually where I was 4 years ago watching this, but far fewer of us journalists here. We were crammed together 4 years ago. For obvious COVID reasons, we're wearing masks. We're much further apart than we were before, and much fewer numbers of dignitaries here. Clearly, the important players were all here to watch this. Security, as you've been hearing all day, extremely tight because of what happened here 14 days ago. But the tone of the whole thing, compared with that speech, American carnage, remember, was the theme 4 years ago, a dystopian vision of the state of the United States, and a plea for America first, a new isolationist foreign policy. So different this time, a positive vision of unity. And with regard to foreign policy, he said, we'll repair our alliances and engage with the world again, telling the rest of the world that America will become a strong and trusted partner for peace. And I can tell you, from my day job as the diplomatic editor, spending a lot of time in global meetings and a lot of time at the UN, that's exactly what the US allies wanted to hear.
Getting pretty noisy down there. We'll leave James Bay's as the band plays on Capitol Hill as the formalities of Inauguration Day start to come to an end. There was another little handover today, if you like, online while all those speeches were happening. The official Twitter accounts of at POTUS, President of the United States, and at VP, Vice President, were handed over to their new custodians, and Kamala Harris wasted no time using that official Vice President Twitter account. Her first tweet in office simply said, "Ready to serve." And also, we noted some House Republicans congratulating the new President and Vice President. If we've got that one for you, it says, as a new administration starts today, House Republicans will continue to fight for freedom, our Constitution, economic freedom, hardworking American families, and the defense of our great nation. Jennifer Victor still with me here. Let's go back to the speech. You were furiously writing down notes as we went. You had the clock on the speech as well. How long was it?
Just about 21 minutes.
21 minutes. What stood out for you? There were so many quotable quotes, weren't there?
Yeah, there were quite a few, and often with these inaugural addresses, you're looking for what that bumper sticker quote might be. You know, the ask not what your country can do for you, or the fear not kind of quotes. And really, it's not quite clear that there is a bumper sticker that came from this. The one that I liked the best was the one that you already said, which is, don't tell me things can't change. There
was a tone in his voice when he said it, wasn't there?
He really meant it, and it had that folksy character that some people find really appealing about how Joe Biden connects with audiences. And certainly the theme of the speech was about unity, even drawing on the name of the country, the United States, as a way to emphasize the need for that unity. But one of the things I noted about that unity theme is he was careful not to say that we all need to think and do and believe the same thing or have the same goals to go on. What he said was, enough of us have to come together to bring the rest of us forward, or to bring all of us forward. I don't know if I got the quote exactly right. My chicken scratches might not be perfect. But I think that's important. I think it's a recognition that he understands that he probably cannot realistically bring this very divided country together, but that maybe there are ways to move forward positively despite that.
We wondered beforehand if he would mention the events of January the 6th. Amy Klobuchar, Senator Amy Klobuchar, who started proceedings, definitely did. She talked about a mob desecrating this temple of our democracy. And then Joe Biden's words, as I wrote it down, this Capitol where violence sought to shake the Capitol's, or this place where violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation. You were saying before it did need to be acknowledged in some way. How do you think he went about it?
Well, one of the more striking moments to me is when he went through this list of these 4 major challenges that the U.S. is facing with the virus. with racial injustice, with climate change, and then he labeled by name white supremacy and domestic terrorism. I don't recall a president in the past talking about those themes in an inaugural address so explicitly in the past. I think that's really a meaningful moment.
Jennifer, let's bring someone else into our conversation, and feel free to jump in if you want to at some stage. We're joined on Skype by KESHA Ram, who is a Vermont state senator and also served as a presidential elector, was also previously the state chair for Kamala Harris's campaign in Vermont. With us from Burlington today, KESHA Ram, thank you so much for your time. Actually, maybe given your links to Kamala Harris, I'll ask you specifically about her. How are you feeling at the moment?
Well, the snow is really coming down here in Vermont, but that has not stopped us from celebrating and watching Kamala Davy Harris, our Vice President of the United States. And all I could think is, I too am America. So this is an incredible moment for so many women, women of color, children of immigrants, a really historic day.
We were watching Kamala Harris's face. There was just this sort of mixture of, as I saw it, pure joy and emotion at the same time. Clearly she knows, well, obviously it's exciting for her, but what rests on her shoulders too?
Absolutely. The event itself had the proper somber tone of most of us continuing our work in state legislatures, trying to steal time away in hospitals or, you know, on wherever we're working, just trying to tune in and reflect on this historic moment. And as you all have already noted, it really felt as though inaugural poet Amanda Gorman was able to clarify and rarefy this moment and make us realize that our daily struggles are important and we need to keep going, and there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Jennifer's nodding alongside me here. Why don't you jump in?
Yeah, no, what struck me about the poem was she was able to strike this amazing lesson, I think, for all Americans in showing us how we can both revere and honor our history without glorifying its injustices, as a way to reach out to all Americans, those who, you know, just this last week we saw the Trump administration put out this 1776 report, which was sort of a direct attack on the 1619 project. We have these almost dueling histories being presented about whether or not U.S. history should be honored and revered as almost perfect, or whether it's deeply flawed. And Amanda Gordon showed us how it can be both.
How it can be done.
Yeah.
KESHA,
22
can I
years
ask you
old
what you
now.
think Kamala Harris might do? No, go ahead, KESHA.
I think there's, oh, sorry, there's a bit of a delay. I was just saying, I just was remarking she's 22 and truly leading the way in this country, and it gives me a lot of hope and courage.
Yeah, so we've got a bit of a delay here between Washington and Vermont and all over the world, quite frankly, so do forgive us. Let's just pause for a second. I want to see what Joe Biden is saying on Twitter. As I said, he's taken over the @POTUS account, President of the United States. He says there is no time to waste when it comes to tackling the crises we face. That's why today I'm heading to the Oval Office to get right to work, delivering bold action and immediate relief for American families. So he's been up here at the Capitol. He's heading down, not a very long drive away, down to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, a building he knows very well indeed, and is going to get to work. And we've, of course, heard all about the executive orders he's going to issue on the first day. KESHA, I'll come back to you just a little bit more on Kamala Harris before we move on. We were musing a little bit earlier before off-air about what she could do. And by that, I mean she obviously has a job as vice president, but vice presidents are often given special projects, if you like. I wonder what you think hers could be, given how much there is to do in these early days.
Well, I think this is a tremendous opportunity to have a former attorney general in the White House. She is somebody who understands the judiciary, understands what it means to uphold the Constitution, and I believe can restore a sense of law and order but as a Black and Indian woman, do it while recognizing that law and order and the protection and service of law enforcement has not often been the same for Black and Brown Americans. So I believe she is going to be able to strike the right balance in terms of criminal justice reform and restoring faith in our judiciary. But really, anything she touches, I believe the country will be watching. And it looks as though President Joe Biden is giving her a lot of that platform to be able to help shape this agenda.
Well, I'll tell you something which I've heard from commentators, an idea, and Jennifer, I might get your view on this as well after KESHA, the idea of Kamala Harris almost being dispatched around the world on, we won't say an apology to her, but clearly there is some work to do in repairing America's image overseas and rebuilding some diplomatic ties. I wonder actually if Kamala Harris, KESHA, might be the right person for that.
I think that's a great point. I know Jamaica and India will be overjoyed to see, you know, the daughter of their sons and daughters, you know, becoming a part of the American story. And so many around the world really do need to see the new face of our country. And I think it would be tremendous if she became one of our greatest ambassadors and emissaries around the world. She certainly knows, you know, how to shake hands when it's appropriate, kiss people on the cheeks when it's appropriate. You know, she's shown that she's very at ease with people of many cultures, probably because she served in California, which is our great melting pot in the United States.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I was just, your supposition that Kamala Harris might become this sort of international ambassador is interesting, because on the one hand, you know, Joe Biden, that's where he cut his teeth, his political teeth. You know, he's a former chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He is very well versed in the whole practice of diplomacy and thinking about the connections between nations and between the United States and other nations, and whether or not he might turn his focus to the incredible domestic crises that America is facing right now and pass that off to his vice president is an interesting possibility. It also sets up an interesting potential trajectory for Ms. Harris because, of course, she is a potential contender for the presidency in the future. And one place where she doesn't have much experience so far is in foreign policy. And so this could be a platform that would speak to her own potential progressive ambitions.
Yeah, good point, isn't it? Because we'll, of course, be thinking about the next election already. And
yeah, sorry to go there.
No, it's, look, what do they say? The race starts the day after the last one, doesn't it? Exactly. We're on the clock already. KESHA, I'll bring you back, and let's talk about Joe Biden's speech now. As I said to Jennifer before, there's so many quotable quotes to come out of it. Unity was the theme. Do you think there was something in there to help bring the country together, or more to the point, to bring those who don't want Joe Biden or don't believe he won this election or don't believe in his policies or whatever it may be, to bring them closer to where this US government will be for the next 4 years at least?
The line that really struck me was disagreement must not lead to disunion. And, you know, I can't get in the minds of those who feel so strongly about the election results or what they perceive to be the election results that they, you know, simply don't want to recognize the reality of this day in the country. But, you know, what we're facing is a moment where we have to say we can disagree at the dinner table, in our legislatures, in the halls of power, and that doesn't mean that we must be divided as a country, that we can no longer communicate and be in relationship. And I think that's a message for all sides of the equation. And, you know, the way our social media culture and other elements of our debate have become incredibly incivil, and we've sort of been torn apart and said, I'm going to walk away from family members and others. We really are on the brink of, you know, being torn apart. And this is a time when hopefully extending a hand, you know, means people will reach back.
I think that's right. I think it's also important to keep in mind that, in a way, President Joe Biden kind of did the best he could. He was folksy, he was warm-hearted, he was honest. He gave a lot of those platitudes about unity with anecdotes and quotables. On the other hand, if you are one of the millions of Americans who truly believe that this election was stolen, that believe this big lie that Donald Trump perpetrated, there is not anything that they could have heard that would undo that.
Right, and further to that, Jennifer, he went there, he talked about January 6th, and he said, scribbled down here, he used the words white supremacism, he used the words domestic terrorism and extremism. Those people won't like that.
That's right. Well, and the one thing that I didn't hear, that I was hoping to hear a little bit more of, was something surrounding the idea of trust. He talked about unity, he talked about neighborliness, he talked about common bonds. But what all of those things lead to that can help us overcome some of these deep divisions that are vexing us now is the idea that we can trust one another, that they could trust him not to do whatever it is their worst fears are imagining at this moment. And it's that element of trust that is so missing and that is so shaping the way we are perceiving, all Americans are perceiving this moment.
Okay. KESHA, I'll come back to you again in Vermont. Joe Biden has tweeted and said already he's heading down to the White House. He's going to get behind the Oval Office desk and get straight to work. I mean, gosh, where do you start if you're Joe Biden right now?
Well, you know, that just brings a smile to my face. And I think as much as Americans want to turn the page, you know, they recognize that there is so much to do just to reconcile with where we've been. And so, you know, I understand it's going to be really challenging to try and extend far enough to reach some of the people who currently don't trust this administration or don't trust Washington or government. But there are so many people who are ready to trust, are ready to get help. We need vaccines in our states. We need resources for our towns and school districts. You know, I know from having started my service in 2009, when he and President Obama took office, they know the gravity of this moment and that states need clarity and certainty to move forward. And that's as important to holding our union together, if not far more important than reaching those who are currently holding back and don't want to play in the sandbox. It's time to give the resources to the institutions and the hospitals and the governments that are going to save people's lives.
KESHA is a Vermont state senator joining us from Burlington, Vermont today. Thank you so much. We do appreciate it. And Jennifer Victor, thank you